Hello, everyone, and welcome. We have our latest in the CLF NYC webinar series today. We are joined by Lily Weeks, who's Design Director with MG West, and Wendy Andringa, who is Founder and Principal with Assemblage Landscape Architecture. Both of you, when you speak later, please do a longer introduction. I'm doing neither of you justice. And they are here to talk with us about what we're calling Forgotten Embodied Carbon, which isn't maybe forgotten, but maybe more aptly kind of left by the wayside more often than we would like. On the furniture and interior design side with Lily, and on the landscape side with Wendy. And so we should, we should have a good presentation from both of them, and then time for questions. So with that, if either of you would like to go first, jump right in.
I can go first.
Amazing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me, Jeremy. Let me screen share. Let me just make this bigger. Can everybody see my screen? Yes.
There's
Perfect.
a little
I see
bit
a thumbs
of
up.
there's a little bit of kind of window hiding in front.
Oh, here we go. Is that better?
Yes, that looks good. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, so as Jeremy mentioned, I'll be talking about rethinking furniture's role in disassembling carbon. And a little bit about me. As Jeremy mentioned, I'm the design director at MG West. MG West is a furniture dealership. I joined in January, so for the last 10 years, I was actually Jeremy's colleague at WRNS Studio. So a few things about me and my journey with carbon. I was part of Metropolis Magazine Climate Toolkit, so some creative strategies for low carbon spaces. So I'll be going over some of those strategies at the end of my presentation. I've also spoken at Greenbelt a few years ago talking about material reuse and as it relates to embodied carbon. And most recently featured in Interior Design Magazine regarding health and wellness and addressing the mental and emotional well-being in recent projects. So all of these things are really tied together. And now in my renewed focus in furniture, one of the ways that I think about it is we really are shaping people's experiences because furniture is the thing that is at the most intimate level. And I think from a carbon storytelling standpoint, it's a really great opportunity to engage with the users of a space to really have them be a part of all of the efforts that the project team puts forward to making low carbon spaces. So my high level table of contents that I'll be going over today is some market signals. You know, I would say every year there's like new things that are happening in the carbon sector. I would say sometimes it might feel that things are stagnant or slow moving, but I would say if you kind of take a pulse every year, you can see some things that are slowly changing. So I'll talk about some of the things that I've seen. Second thing I'll talk about is design for disassembly isn't just for architecture and interiors, it's also for furniture. I was just at NeoCon, which is a furniture conference that happens every year in Chicago. I was there last week, and I would say design for disassembly was a big topic, which is really exciting because that wasn't a conversation that I had ever been a part of from the furniture side up until this year. The third section I'm calling Pressure Makes Diamonds. Because I think the more that we advocate and ask manufacturers what we're looking for, they will respond. And so there are some interesting gems that I found, again, in my recent trip, seeing like the new up and coming furniture at these shows and thinking about some creative ways to incorporate low carbon strategies in new products. And then some strategies. Wanted to end this presentation with some high-level strategies for your next FF&E effort and some things that have worked for me on previous projects. So I'll start with some market signals. The first one is I wanted just to draw attention to Reseat. So Reseat is a company that's based here in the Bay Area, but they do work nationally. And one of the recent conversations that I had with their founder, Brandy, about circularity and furniture reuse. And one of the biggest barriers is really understanding, you have a client, they say, we want to reuse, that's great. The first question that anybody's going to ask you that's helping with your furniture is, what do you have? And I would say that's one of the biggest barriers to furniture reuse, because oftentimes furniture really comes in at the tail end of the project and a client is really looking to move into their space. And so what the digital product passport is this idea that you can essentially categorize and potentially have a QR code on furniture that would then help you towards its end of life, whether you want to resell it, you want to reuse it, you want to redeploy it in a different campus, maybe on a different floor. And so it really allows really that the beginning of the circularity for the furniture. There are also manufacturers that are starting to incorporate some of this. And by this, I mean the identification of the product, because oftentimes commercial furniture can be somewhat complex. So what this digital product passport really is the full life cycle tracking. So again, really understanding what you have. One of the things that makes this, I would say, marketable to larger companies is I talked a little bit about the enterprise-wide visibility. So when you have these big global clients that really have the ability to change the market, that they'll be able to use something like this to reuse their furniture. The seamless resale and reuse, again, you don't really know what you can reuse unless you know what you have. And then it also helps you if you're trying to do some reporting and really have this be a part of the story and some of the tracking that you're doing. This also helps with that aspect. I know from working with Jeremy on some projects that oftentimes the calculators don't really have a really great way to capture the furniture footprint. So this is one way that you could do that on a project. The second market signal I wanted to talk about, I just have two in this section, is one of the A&D firms that I work with here, Gensler, is rolling out what they call their Gensler Product Sustainability, their GPS standards. And it not only touches furniture, you can see there's several different product categories that it touches, from flooring to bad insulation, gypsum board, decorative glass. But one of the exciting things I think that I found for this is they're really starting to tackle some sustainability standards for systems furniture in a way that one is like the minimum standard and then a market differentiator. And I think this is probably the most comprehensive market signal that I've seen from the A&D side that really gets down to the brass tacks of things. I would say I know when in my time at WRNS, we created something similar to this, but more on the architectural finishes and interior finishes standpoint. And then now we're really starting to see, I would say, what we were seeing in the material standpoint start to permeate the furniture industry, which is very exciting. I call these market signals too, is because oftentimes these things can be aspirational, but again, these are the things that really move markets and make manufacturers take notice that if large architecture and design firms are seeking these aspirational ideas for systems furniture, then they're likely to then move forward and respond to it with their upcoming product. And all of this is available on Gensler's website, and it's open source. So if that's something that you would be interested in seeing for your future projects, it's kind of interesting to read. The second section I'm calling Design for Disassembly. So as I had mentioned, last week I was in Chicago. So every year there's a furniture event called Neocon, which is the Super Bowl, if you will, of the furniture industry, where all the new product ideas, thinking behind commercial interiors as they relate to furniture are shown. And one of the big trends that I saw was this notion of design for disassembly and screws, not glues or staples, because that's also something that's particular to the furniture industry. So I wanted to call out a few products that I saw, because oftentimes when it comes to furniture, it really just comes down to the specs and what you're putting into a project, which is very different than, in my time in interiors where, you draw something, you detail it. At the end of the day with furniture, it's really working with a great curator, a great dealer to really help you find pretty much match make between you and the product. So going here from left to right, I would say the other thing that was great too about this show was that this aspect of design for disassembly really permeated different brands and wasn't, I would say in years past, I've seen it where there's certain brands that are very sustainability forward and that's their niche. It was no longer, I would say, a niche aspect. It's something that went across continents, across different styles of furniture. So that was really exciting. So from left to right, this is the Zenoda Goma chair. It's I would say part of what also makes it low carbon is a timeless design. So it's not something that you would potentially want to um, replace often. And what's interesting about this is that it has a removable fabric cover that's really taut to the vegetable-based foam that's underneath. And you can see this little seam here that these all of these legs actually unscrew so that the whole top of it comes off. So it's essentially, again, the really designed for that future use. The second product is Mater. This is a German-based company. This is their Eternity chair. And all of their seating is designed for disassembly. But what was also interesting about this, even from designing for disassembly, it's also the materiality has been very considered. So this shell is made by mixing e-waste with coffee waste. It actually, when you see that in person, it actually has a really beautiful patinaed texture, almost feels a little like suede. So not only is it recycled, it's infinitely recyclable. So it can be ground up once it's disassembled and then remade into the same material again. Also task seating, something that we specify a lot of. This was introduced last year at NeoCon, the Hayworth Breck chair. It's made out of 53% recycled content. And what's exciting is that they've also started tracking their carbon footprint. I don't feel like I put this in this presentation, but the other part that was interesting about this chair was that the way that it was designed to fit in a much smaller box so that when they ship it, they can ship more of them in one truck. So what I liked was the thinking creatively about not just the materiality of it, but then how is it assembled? How does it ship? How can we potentially create other opportunities for carbon savings, and also it being lightweight, so it really reduced from a life cycle aspect the carbon from its transportation. This one was pretty exciting, the Hayworth cardigan chair. It uses absolutely no glues, and this material is digitally knit, which means that it's a product without any leftover. So I would say that was also a trend that I saw, was a lot of 3D printed materials, and not just 3D printed in I would say the sense that we might think of, but even knit technology is moving that way. And this is assembled using 6 screws. So moving towards a great product categories. The other thing, this is that task chair, and this is on their website, that I found interesting is you can talk about design for disassembly, but at the end of its life, does the person, the facilities, or the owner really know what to do with it? So this chair comes not only with assembly instructions, but disassembly instructions, which I have never seen before on a piece of furniture. I've never seen disassembly instructions, but that was exciting to me to really see how this chair disassembles. It starts to outline the materiality of each type so that you understand where it can go as you're thinking about its end of life. And then this section, very similar to the last one, but not necessarily in regards to disassembly, but just thinking about as we apply pressure to the industry, we can really be part of creating interesting and beautiful products that we want to include in our projects. Two of these manufacturers we saw earlier, but they had some, I would say certain manufacturers had more of a ethos towards it, so they might have different products that addressed carbon in different ways for different products. So for example, Zenoda, this is the Zaza sofa. and all of their sofas had fully removable covers. I would say the last maybe 3 years, I started seeing more removable covers off of things, and for a few things, cleaning things, being able to have things reupholstered more easily. So if oftentimes with commercial furniture, if you want to reupholster something, it actually can't be reupholstered unless it's reupholstered in the factory because of the way that it's made. So it's really interesting to start seeing more manufacturers starting to adopt things that are removable to give flexibility in the future. And I'm not an I don't know a ton about what makes these foams more sustainable, but I have been hearing a lot more rumblings about the types of foams that are being used in sofas. And I just really also love the sofa because it was very comfortable and also very striking. This center table is related to that chair that we saw earlier. This was designed by Patrizia Ercolia, won a lot of design awards. This is also one of those biodegradable plastic and made out of coffee and wood waste. Really beautiful design. Very comes in an olive, terracotta, and like a mauve tone, which is interesting. This product I saw actually probably a few months ago now, but it was pretty exciting. This is Arper. They're a European company. They're making this chair entirely out of paper bonded with natural resin. And the other thing I forgot to mention about this alder table is that it can also, similar to the chair, can be ground up and infinitely made into itself again. But this chair was really interesting because it's made entirely out of bonded paper and natural resin. And so it can sequester carbon. They brought the chair into the office and had a piece that was half bonded and half unbonded, so you could see the paper as it was compressed together, which was really interesting. The other thing I liked about this product as well was that it inherently took the materiality took the inherent quality of the paper they were using, so it only comes in one finish, which almost looked like leather. But I thought that was really cool because, again, that tells the story of the materiality and that we are specifying things that have a connection to the original intent. And one of the interesting stories as well was the end of life management. At the end of its life, it transforms into biochar, which sequesters CO2. Really interesting story that Arper has a chair that's just called Katifa, and one of the things that they're doing is they're taking some of their historic product and figuring out how to make it more sustainable. So on some other products, they're starting to remove the staples, the glues, thinking about the materiality of things while still maintaining the integrity of the design. So I'd recommend that one. And then I wanted to add some strategies here at the end. In 2020, I was interviewed by Metropolis magazine about my experience going to Greenbuild in 2018. We were working on a office refresh at the time, and I wanted some low carbon strategies for the interiors aspect, and I couldn't really find a lot of information. A lot of it was related more to the architectural side. So that led, in collaboration with Metropolis magazine, this climate toolkit for interior design, because there's even still now, I think there is more information, but there still isn't a lot. So if somebody who's curious or you want to incorporate lower carbon strategies into the entirety of the project, this could be a really great place to start. So I wanted to highlight some of the aspects of this. The beginning of it starts with the why you should be doing it, and then also explain some carbon facts. But I figured, given the audience, I would skip that section. But if you have other teammates that you need to bring on board and give them the language in which to speak about this, it could be a great tool to provide to them. So it starts out with the pre-design phase, and this is really about working with your client, with all of your stakeholders and everybody together to really set some common ground. So as you go through the project, it gives you some strategies to really maintain those low carbon goals. And then during the design phase, some things to start thinking about. So at every step of the way, it's pretty much giving you some notions as to um, questions you should be asking, stakeholders you should be reaching out to, questions you might need to be asking your client, questions you should be asking yourself, when to engage into reuse, and how to track and communicate your progress. This section is the most relevant to what I'm talking about now, which is materiality, and that doesn't necessarily just mean the materials of the, oftentimes when we were talking about tally or other aspects of we were doing like the living building challenge, we would talk about if your project was like a little dollhouse and you turned it around, everything that fell out didn't count and everything that was attached did. But now what we're talking about is all the things that come out, and really trying to figure out how can we make all of those things also matter to the project. And so this is really giving you some ideas as you start thinking about not only the things that are, stay intact, but then how do you send those, which we talked a little bit about earlier, send those market signals to promote the low carbon products, because sometimes the things that we are looking for don't yet exist, but that doesn't mean we can't ask for them. And then product selection, I find this to be pretty helpful as you're thinking about each item that you're looking for and questions you should be asking, potentially changing your approach to materials and seeing things in a slightly different way. And then not forgetting that sampling responsibly and, what we do as we are actively working on projects is a part of that climate story. And then in the closeout phase, rethinking, the afterlife of a space, sharing that information, and evaluating your work. And I wanted to end here with a slide that I had shared during my green build presentation. And this was a slide that I had shared with a client that this is very early on in the process. This client had not done any low carbon projects, but I think this is still really valid, and we were all able to come to a consensus of this is what we're going to do, and I think these are still very appropriate and specific to furniture and how we can promote low carbon strategies. So I'd say the first thing is to try to not be trendy and really emphasize things that are timeless. The more you can make your furniture timeless, the more that it will have that long sense of life. So if you have some crazy color palette, maybe you do a more neutral fabric on the sofa and do accent pillows so that that can be changed over time. We talked a little bit about design for deconstruction. So the way that applies to furniture was potentially seeking product that at the end of its life can be disassembled, and the materials can go to their appropriate streams. Use what you have. So we go back to the receipt product passport, if that's a cycle that you could start, or if you have a partner that can help inventory some of your product, that would be a great way to incorporate that. Less is more, I would say, when you're reviewing so much product and looking at things through the lens of carbon, really limiting or editing, I should say, your palette so that you can really invest the time that is necessary to really vet all of your products is a good thing. Prioritize integrity. I think that goes with investment in beauty. Really thinking about does this space require commercial grade or high level commercial grade product, or can we get away with retail? Because sometimes you might have something that's that contract grade or that soft contract grade, but if something isn't really meant to be used in a certain way, then that could lead to it being needing to be replaced sooner. Multifunctional, I would say the way that relates to furniture is, and this is also a trend that we're seeing just in interiors in general, was as real estate, as people are coming back to the office and people are trying to leverage their real estate, I'm seeing more clients really wanting to use their space multifunctionally. So you might have a cafe that needs to be, in the morning, it's a coffee bar. In the afternoon, it's a opportunity for people to come work, almost like a Starbucks environment. And then there's the lunch hour, and then there's potentially another opportunity for one-on-one areas. So could you specify things like booths or banquettes or things that can not only be workplace that have the posture for a laptop computer, but can also be a place to eat. So I would say that's the way that you can think about furniture, not just being for one aspect, but it's in a working posture. And then you can ask for EPDs for furniture. Not everybody has them, but more manufacturers are starting to provide them. I would say that there's significantly more product and it changes rather quickly. So I would say you can ask. They are not always available, but it is something that's interesting to see that's moving in the market. I would say maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I couldn't find an EPD for an interiors product, and now they've become very ubiquitous. So um, you should always ask. And that's what I have for you all today. And here is my email if anybody wants to follow up. Happy to chat. And I will stop sharing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lily.
Mm-hmm.
Wendy, you're it.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I am going to start to share. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get
Looks
rid of
good.
the little Zoom boxes over here. So that was great, Lily. I really want one of those red pointers that you have, one of the red cursors. That was very cool. I just wanted to start by saying thanks to Jeremy and Laura for inviting me to speak in this venue. And I'm Wendy Andringa. I'm the founder of Assemblage Landscape Architecture. We are a Brooklyn-based practice that really focuses on ecologically resilient design inspired by the intelligence of nature. And I'm also a volunteer member of Reclaim NYC, which is a New York City group that's helping grow the circular design and construction policy and also the infrastructure that's needed to support the use of reclaimed materials in the city. So I wanted to start by just talking about circular thinking because I'm going to share a lot of our work that incorporates reuse and reuse of materials. And I wanted to talk about how salvage and reuse is one effective path towards decarbonization in our work. So the status quo that is just omnipresent right now is linear thinking, and that involves extraction. And also, after materials serve one use, they are demolished and go to landfill. And this is basically take, make, waste. And so this circular thinking is eliminating or as much as possible, the extraction of new resources and also the diverting material from landfill and keeping it in two types of loops, one that I'm showing here. The circular loop is deconstruction instead of demolition, going to salvage and reconstruction, or else the large loop, which is recycling and reprocessing materials that go back into new construction. And so what we're interested in at Assemblage is really how do we make landscapes from deconstructed materials? So a lot of materials that are not sufficient structurally for architecture for reuse in structures are perfectly fine to reuse in landscape. And so that's really what we want to capitalize on is how do we recoup that material, and we're also always moving towards calling it resources and not waste. So Laura asked for me to present some sort of ninja tactics, and I'm going to start with a project, a small community park that we designed in Gowanus, which really was all about being resourceful and using as much of the resources that were coming from large-scale demolitions in the neighborhood around us, in order to be resourceful and also creative. So everything you're looking at here in our project was salvaged, reused, or got procured from a city agency such as OER that reuses soil and things like that. I'm going to talk about two of the more salient features here in the project, and one was the timber benches. We reclaimed wood from the South Brooklyn Casket Company that was being demolished a block away from the park. We kind of stalked this demo project as it was underway. And we were very stealth about getting over there to find out from the site supervisor if we could have access to some of those timbers for a community park. And ultimately, they agreed. And here you have it. This is about as ninja as you get, cutting the cutting the beams to size on the sidewalk with a chainsaw. And so this was very successful for us, and it sort of like opened the gates for, okay, what else is out there and what else is available. We also looked at reclaiming bricks that were there. The warehouses around us were all coming down around the same time. So we worked with Field Form, a design build firm here, and they were very sort of expert at also getting access to the sites. And as you can see, demolition is not very kind to materials. So unfortunately, what they had to do was really sort of glean and pick through all of the rubble. But they did end up finding a lot of material that was fully intact. And we use that to create small garden paths. We would have liked to have done the whole park with this material, but unfortunately it was very difficult to find enough for the whole park. So this just goes to show you how important deconstruction is instead of demolition. And I wanted to note here, this sort of led to a research path for us about learning about the histories of these materials. And in the enlargement there, you can see the logo that's stamped on this brick. And that's called, the term is a frog, and it basically identifies the manufacturer of the brick. And we could trace this brick back to a location, a brickyard in the Hudson Valley, where most of Brooklyn's bricks came from in the 1800s. So there's history here. There's a lot, if you think about how perfect this unit is and how much labor and carbon actually went into producing it. All these bricks were made from coal-fired ovens, and there was a long legacy of labor. So every time we demolish those bricks and crush them and haul them to landfill, we're sort of erasing a really important part of history. So that sort of opened up a process for us of exploring, well, thinking about where did all of the materials in our park come from, and how can we map that? So this is a story map that we created to basically map every single component of the park, from the soil to the concrete blocks, to also tell the story of the salvaged bricks, even the trees that we planted in the park were salvaged from another lot in Gowanus that was going to be become a sewage tank storage site. So I guess I can stop this now, but I just wanted to show a little bit about this process. We just think that tracking materials and showing their histories is really important. And just to look at the final park, again, we really enjoyed working with Field Form on this. Another material that we're very interested in exploring is recycled concrete aggregate, also known as recycled stone. So we visited a lot in Long Island City, Hunters Point Recycling, to get some material to just experiment with. And the owner was very interested in what we were doing. Obviously, he's hoping that more people can explore uses for this, because right now the primary use is as setting under new streets. So once you start to wash this material and look at it a little bit closer, you realize it's a little bit of everything. It's brick, asphalt, concrete. There is some stone mixed in there, so you name it. Bulk waste is basically transported there, dropped off, and they sort it, they wash it, they sieve it, and crush it to make this material. And basically, we consider it bits of New York City from everywhere. And so they do periodic testing of it. So we took samples of it and we cast it into some pavers. We created a hex paver and then finished it with a grinder similar to terrazzo, and we were really excited about the results. We're still exploring the best ratio of the matrix so that the material comes through. But for our first pilot, we were very excited about it. We also are very interested in exploring the reuse of all materials on site, and often we end up having to take down a lot of trees in our projects in landscape. So we're always thinking about how we can reuse those. So we're designing a climate adaptive waterfront park in Hudson, New York. And part of the design there is to raise the shoreline in a key area. And we're doing that because sea level rise is going to be encroaching on the park by 2050. So one thing is we have these enormous, beautiful cottonwood trees on the site, which have to go because we're going to be raising the grade. So we started to think about how we could use all of this wood. And so we did a tree salvage inventory, looking at each tree, kind of like you would look at, this reminds me of how they sort of map out the cuts of meat on livestock. But we had to do this in order to understand exactly what we had to work with and how we were going to use it. So we modeled the material, and what you're seeing on the left is one tree sort of dissected in three different options of how we could reuse that wood. So all the wood will be, all the bark will be stripped and it'll be sealed, and we're going to reuse all of these pieces in different ways to create a sort of natural playground for the project. And the community is very excited about this approach. So when it's difficult to lose beloved trees, this is a really good solution. We also work on the waterfront at the intersection of land and water. And so we're working on a new pier design in New York City. And this is a typical shoreline with a seawall, a little bit of riprap, and then the seafloor sloping down pretty quickly. And so generally, this is when we are asked to sort of restore more of a live edge around our shorelines. This is what we're starting with. And so our initial research told us that what we're dealing with on the seafloor is this black silt. It's very mucky. And so because of the repeated dredging in our harbor and also the hardened seawall, you end up with an area that's sort of devoid of life. There's a certain amount of life on this in this intertidal area and on the rocks, the riprap and the near shore, but once it drops off, it gets pretty blank. And we heard time and time again from ecological nonprofits that whenever they try to put gabion baskets or restore the muck down there, it ends up just sliding right down. And so part of what we were doing is taking apart an old pier and building a new one. The old pier has to remain operational. The new pier is going to be constructed next to it. So we started thinking about, well, okay, we already have these piles that are there, and what we're going to do, we proposed, is remove the slab on top, but keep the piles as a feature that we can use to stabilize some of the marine restoration that we're going to do. They're already in place. There's no need to remove them, and they can become a salvage feature for the new restoration. So in tandem with that, we're proposing sort of a catwalk that would walk over those piles, so that the public can see what's happening down beneath. And the piles then would be an anchor for all of the new pile jackets or floating wetlands or everything that we're going to propose in this area. So this is another example of talking early, before the team is when they're starting to talk about demolition, and finding out what kind of resources are existing that you can work with. And then lastly, this is an unbuilt project. This was a proposal that we worked on the west shore of Staten Island near Arthur Kill Channel. And a offshore wind developer was looking at this area right here, if you can see my cursor, where those two tanks are. And as part of their development proposal, they were looking at this area, this sort of gray, mucky area along the shoreline, to create a public park. There's currently a scrapyard in that area. Over on the left here is the West Mound of Fresh Kills. And then there's a residential neighborhood called Rossville on the other side of 440. And the absolutely intriguing thing about this area is it's 40 acres of boat graveyard. So for the last, I don't know, 50, 100 years, boats have gone here to die. And there is so many of them that they have become a part of the local ecology. So as part of our proposal, it was not to cleanse this area, but to actually embrace it. And we started to look at how this could be used to create new habitat and exploration. There's nowhere to take all of these boats. They're definitely going to stay here. So we also looked at how the boat graveyard serves as sort of a primary defense against storm surge and sea level rise. So one thing we explored is, how do the ghost boats actually start to mitigate storm surge and become a wave break, reduce the energy so that we just have a floodable park, but this can all serve as a line of defense against storm surge. So I just want to finish up here about the importance of thinking circular. And I also wanted to mention a couple of tools that are sort of landscape focused tools. One is called Carbon Conscience, and the other is called the Pathfinder Decarbonization Tool. Both of these are very helpful during the design phase for sort of evaluating how long it will take for your design to become climate positive and start sequestering more carbon than than is in the embodied materials. I don't know, however, at this point, how well it incorporates and would calculate and have metrics for reclaimed and reused material in the landscape. So for now, thinking about how to adapt and reuse everything that you have on site first, even before you start tearing it down, and then keep that material on site. Talk to your landscape architect about how it could be reused and do that early. Innovate with that, and also innovate in the techniques that you use um, to find the material, and also where are you going to think about where your material is potentially going to go. And then lastly, as in the boat graveyard example, embrace entropy and don't sanitize your site. So thank you, everyone. There's my email in case you'd like to contact me, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you both. So we have 10 minutes, which is awesome. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask?
I have questions. Thank you both so much. It's great to see all this new stuff happening. Wendy, you mentioned that you were really showing up and to get these salvage materials from people who are working with them on neighboring sites, like for example in Gowanus, and that was how you managed to procure them. That case, for people who are looking for salvage materials, do you feel like that has in your experience been the most successful way to just like find sites, talk to people, and get it in an informal process? Or are there now like actual repositories of these materials in New York City that others can sort of go shopping in?
Yeah, yeah. For us on a project of the scale of Dolly's Park, and we actually were speaking with developers early in the process, developers who were building next door. That worked well for us. It's certainly not something that a lot of projects have time for. And it's also dependent on how much demolition is happening around you. But I don't know, I'm always sort of trying to link and finding out what's available and talking about this. It's just a part of it's just an interest of mine. But that's what Reclaim NYC is trying to do. We're trying to, find ways to connect supply and demand of the material. Well, there's lots of supply, right? There's more supply, but the trick is connecting that to the demand and thinking about project timelines, thinking about storage facilities, and also thinking about all the costs associated with that. So it's very challenging right now, and there are city agencies, EDC and DDC, that are now they've come out with circular construction guidelines, and this is a part of projects now to do an audit, to do to just take this through the whole process. But it's very challenging. There is no storage infrastructure right now. So that's something that Reclaim is starting to always trying to advocate for. So I'm sorry I don't have a more positive answer about this repository that's coming, but that's it's slow and steady to get there. And I
Yeah,
think there's
well,
some folks in this meeting right now who are also working in that environment that could maybe share if you feel like it.
yeah, please share your stories, success stories.
I was thinking about you, Casey.
Yeah, I'm gonna just quickly jump in. It's really early for me to even have this conversation, but Wendy and I met at a deconstruction event with Dave Bennick, and I've been working. I live up in the Hudson Valley, not in New York City, so sorry to crash the New York City event here.
All are welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thanks for joining. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks so much.
I've been working within the Hudson Valley to create a regional circular material management strategy and working with Ulster County to help stand up a reuse innovation center, sort of connecting the end materials with folks on the supply side. But in addition to that, and Wendy, I just sent you a note just to follow up on this. I've been working with technology partner, I Waste Not Systems, to help try and stand up sort of like a digital platform that helps connect supply and demand of reused materials, because over and over that seems to be an issue, and helping to do things like the logistics of moving reused materials as well, so storage and transport. Really early stages, but I just did want to throw my hat in the ring and say this is something that I and a few others are working on to help sort of create the digital systems behind this structure, to help make this a bit easier for folks trying to reuse materials at scale.
That's so exciting.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like on the one hand, New York, it has an advantage because we've got, people in the design field like Wendy and Lily who are leading the way and showing how it can be done with built projects. But on the other hand, we don't have the space part of this supply chain equation. So it sort of needs to be also like regional or even national, where cities with like lots of vacant lots are going to be able to monetize like this idea of building a new type of economy with circular materials. And they're like Detroit, Chicago, places in the Rust Belt that could really benefit from this. So that's super interesting, and I'd love to learn more about what's happening there.
There are other cities that seem to be, one step ahead of us though, what Casey's doing is amazing for the Hudson Valley region. But for those that are interested, San Antonio and also Seattle are really kind of leagues ahead of us in terms of deconstruction and having that repository.
Yeah, and offering up even Boulder, Colorado as well. It's a really great resource.
I've also
Yeah,
heard
exciting.
Pittsburgh is doing a lot, but I don't know specifically.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, they have Construction Junction, which is kind of, they have an old warehouse where they're actually targeting demolition sites and collecting the material from that. And actually, the biggest material they get is like church pews and desks from schools, and trying to find new ways to do that. So I was part of the urban design build studio at Carnegie Mellon, which is also partnered with Construction Junction, and they have what they call Project Re, and they're trying to find new ways to prototype using a lot of this reused material that would probably not be used. So turning the pews into shingles and things like that, and it's fairly interesting.
Very cool.